I never expected a knock on my door that Sunday to change everything. What happened next left me questioning everything I thought I knew about him. And about myself. You won't believe what he told me after all these years. Stay with me till the end, because this story will touch you in ways you never imagined. Leonardo, I said quietly, you're allowed to feel lost. You're allowed to not have everything together. No one does. Not at your age, not at mine. He let out a slow breath, one that seemed to release something heavy inside him. He set his mug down on the coffee table, his fingers lingering on the rim for a moment before he looked back at me. You always say things that make sense, he murmured. Even when they hurt a little. I smiled faintly. Truth usually does. For a second he just watched me. Really watched me. The way someone looks when they're collecting the courage to say something they've been holding for too long. His shoulders rose with a breath, then fell. There's something else, he said. My heart gave a small, gentle thud. Okay, I said softly. Tell me. He rubbed his palms on his knees, then leaned back, eyes drifting toward the window as if he needed the sky to steady him. It's not just work. Or my parents. Or feeling stuck, he began slowly. It's me. I think I'm starting to see my life clearer. And I'm realizing how lonely I've been. The words hung between us like fragile glass. I swallowed. Lonely how? He hesitated, searching for the right words. Not in a dramatic way, he said. Just, when I was younger, I thought by 28 I'd have things figured out. Someone to come home to. Someone who understood me. Someone who... He stopped himself, shaking his head. Forget it. Leonardo. I said gently, don't pull back now. He looked at me, his expression open in a way that felt both vulnerable and heartbreakingly earnest. You're easy to talk to, he said. Being around you feels. He paused as if the word weighed too much. Safe. Something warm pressed softly against my ribs, unexpected but not unwelcome. Everyone needs a place that feels safe, I replied. He nodded, then gave a small, almost embarrassed laugh. You know what's strange? When I was a kid, I thought you were just kind. Like a mom, friend to the whole neighborhood. But lately I realize you're more than that. A lot more. I felt my breath catch. Not in shock, but in a sudden awareness of the moment shaping itself between us. What do you mean? I asked, though a part of me already knew. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward a little, elbows on his knees again, as if he needed the closeness to steady himself. I mean, he said quietly, that sometimes the people who help us the most, we don't really see them until we're old enough to understand what they meant. His voice was low, sincere, almost careful. And I think, he continued, I'm finally old enough to understand. The room felt warmer suddenly. The soft hum of the house, the faint scent of tea, the late afternoon sunlight slipping into the living room. Everything seemed to lean in, listening. I didn't move closer. I didn't move away either. I simply held his gaze and let the moment breathe. Leonardo, I said gently. It's okay to appreciate someone. It's okay to feel connected, but you're overwhelmed right now. Tired. Looking for grounding. Don't confuse that with something else. I'm not confused, he said. Quiet, steady, certain in a way that surprised me. I opened my mouth, then closed it. My heart was beating slower, heavier. He softened then, sensing my hesitation. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I just wanted to tell the truth for once. I didn't want to keep it all in my head anymore. I exhaled slowly, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Thank you for trusting me, I said. That means more than you know. He nodded, and something in his expression eased. Like he'd finally put down something heavy. The air between us settled. Still warm but gentler now, like waves that had stopped crashing and begun to roll softly instead. Outside the light dimmed further, the sky shifting to early evening. I stood and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside to peek at the darkening street. You should stay for dinner, I said without looking at him. If you want. I was just going to heat something simple. Behind me I heard the quiet exhale of someone who felt relief wash through him. I'd like that, he said. I turned back toward him, and he smiled, small, tired, grateful. And for the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel quite so quiet. I moved toward the kitchen, and I heard him rise from the armchair and follow me, his footsteps softer now, like the weight on his shoulders had shifted. The air between us felt different, not heavy anymore, but full, like something had opened, something quiet but real. I opened the fridge and stared at the shelves for a moment, not really sure what I was even looking for. It wasn't about the food. I just needed a second to breathe, to steady myself after everything he had said. "You don't have to cook anything fancy," Leonardo said behind me. "I didn't come to be a burden." "You're not a burden," I replied, closing the fridge door softly. "You're a guest, and guests get fed." He smiled at that, the kind of smile that eased the tiredness in his eyes. "Then I'll chop something," he offered. "Let me help." "Okay?" I said, handing him a cutting board and a knife. "Just be careful. I don't need to carry you to urgent care tonight." He laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen in a way that warmed the walls. We worked side by side, me rinsing vegetables at the sink, him slicing them into neat strips with focused movements. For a moment it felt almost domestic, two people moving around each other with a quiet rhythm, the evening light turning softer as it settled behind the houses on our street. "You know," Leonardo said, his eyes on the cutting board, "when I drove here today, I rehearsed 100 ways to say everything I told you, and none of them sounded right." "And did the real version sound right?" I asked. He paused, thinking. "It sounded honest," he said, "and I needed that." I nodded, placing the vegetables into a pan. Honesty is a good place to start. He leaned against the counter, resting his hip against the edge. "I think I'm tired of pretending I'm okay," he admitted. "And with you, I don't feel like I have to pretend." Something about those words settled into my chest. Softly, carefully, like they were meant to land exactly where they did. "Well," I said quietly, "then maybe this is where you come when you need air." He looked at me, and for a second, our eyes held, not intensely, not with pressure, but with understanding, with something unspoken that neither of us had to name. Dinner came together simply. Warm, comforting food that filled the house with a gentle smell. I set 2 plates on the small dining table, the same table where he'd once finished a high school paper while the storm rattled the windows. Funny how life circles back. We sat across from each other. He pushed his fork into the food, took a bite, and closed his eyes briefly. "This is really good," he said. "It's just vegetables and noodles." I laughed. "Yeah, but it tastes like someone cared." I didn't know how to respond to that. My throat tightened a little, and I took a sip of water to hide the moment. We ate slowly, talking about small things, old neighbors, movies he liked, the stray cat that kept circling my porch lately. The conversation wasn't deep, not like earlier. It was comfortable. Healing, maybe. When the plates were almost empty, he pushed his food aside and looked at me with a seriousness that felt gentle, not heavy. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." He hesitated, then leaned forward slightly, folding his hands on the table. "When you look at me now," he said quietly, "do you still see that stressed kid from years ago, or do you see the man I've become?" The question sat between us with surprising weight. Not inappropriate, not suggestive, just a vulnerable, searching. I held his gaze, feeling something steady rise in me, clarity maybe. "I see both," I said softly. "The boy who was afraid of failing, and the man who's trying so hard not to let life swallow him. And I see someone who's growing." He breathed out, almost in relief. "That means more than you know." The room fell into a soft silence. Not uncomfortable, just full of the truth we'd shared. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one, and the house settled around us with quiet creaks. Like it was listening, like it knew this moment mattered. "I'm glad I knocked," he said finally. "So am I answered. And something inside me felt warm in a way I hadn't felt in years. We lingered at the table long after the plates were empty, neither of us rushing to stand, neither of us eager for the moment to end. The light above the dining table was dim, soft enough to feel gentle, but bright enough to see each other clearly. He traced the rim of his glass with his finger, a small nervous habit I recognized from years ago. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't plan any of this. I thought I'd come in, say thank you, maybe talk for a few minutes. I didn't think I'd be sitting here actually feeling calm." "That's what homes are supposed to do," I replied, my voice softer without meaning to be. "Make you feel like you can breathe again." His eyes flicked up to mine, and there was something there. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something unspoken that shimmered in the warm glow of the dining light. I cleared the plates, stacking them to take to the kitchen. He stood up immediately. "Let me help." "You're a guest," I said, waving him off. He chuckled. "I think I lost the right to call myself a guest a long time ago." Despite myself, I smiled. And maybe that was the moment I realized how natural it felt, him being here again, sitting at my table, walking in my kitchen like before but somehow different now. Older, more sure of himself, and yet still carrying invisible weight. We moved around each other easily, him rinsing plates, me drying them. It felt oddly peaceful, as if the house itself welcomed the company. When we finished, I leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. "Do you feel a little lighter now?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I do. More than I expected to." He hesitated. "Can I be honest with you about something?" "Always." He looked down for a moment, breathing in deeply like he needed courage. Then he lifted his gaze, and the sincerity in his eyes was almost disarming. "I don't have many people I can talk to like this," he said. "Most of my friends don't really listen. They hear a problem and jump straight to solutions. But you actually hear me." I felt something warm bloom in my chest, unexpected and soft. "Well," I said lightly, "you're easy to listen to." He smiled at that, small, thoughtful, touched in a way he didn't hide this time. We stepped back into the living room, and he sank onto the armchair again while I settled onto the couch. The evening had turned quiet outside. No lawn mowers, no passing cars, just the hum of the air vent and the faint chirping of crickets through the closed windows. He leaned his head back, eyes drifting toward the ceiling. "You ever notice how time feels different in this house?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Calmer. Like the whole world hits pause when I'm here." I laughed softly. "Maybe that's just what happens when no kids are running around anymore." He shook his head. "No, it's not just that, it's you." His voice was gentle, almost careful. "You make things feel steady." The words rested between us with a quiet uneasiness. Not uncomfortable, but meaningful that neither of us moved for a second. Finally, I broke the stillness. "It's getting a little late," I said softly, not wanting to say it but needing to be responsible. "You should probably get some rest. You've had a long day." He nodded but didn't stand right away. "Can I sit here for just a few more minutes?" he asked. "I'm not ready to go back to the noise yet." "Of course," I said. "Stay as long as you need." So he did. A few minutes passed in silence. He rubbed his hands together slowly, his eyes tracing the familiar corners of my living room as if he were memorizing something. Then he sat forward, elbows on his knees, looking at me with that same soft seriousness from earlier. "Selena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm glad I came here today. More than you know." "I'm glad you did too," I whispered back. And that moment, quiet, gentle, heavy with unspoken understanding, felt like it stretched, like the world outside disappeared for just a breath. Finally, he stood up, slow and reluctant. "I should go," he said softly. "But, can I ask you one more thing before I do?" I looked up at him, feeling something shift again, something subtle but unmistakable. "Of course," I said. "Ask me anything." He took a small step closer, his expression open, vulnerable, waiting for something. Maybe permission, maybe reassurance, maybe just a sign that it was okay to say what he wanted to say. And then, in the gentlest voice he'd used all evening, he said, "When I feel like this again, is it okay if I come back?" I walked him to the door, not because I needed to, but because something in me didn't want the evening to end abruptly. The house felt strangely full with him inside it. And now, with each step we took toward the hallway, it felt like the warmth was trailing behind us. He picked up his jacket from the couch, shaking a bit of lint off the sleeve. "I didn't plan on staying this long," he said, softly. "I didn't mind," I replied. "It was nice having someone here." He stopped, looking at me the way someone looks when they're trying to memorize a moment. I felt my breath hitch just slightly, a tiny pause I hoped he didn't notice. "You deserve that," he said. "To have people around who make you feel less alone." He said it gently, without pity, without assumption. Just a truth spoken in a soft voice. I folded my arms loosely, leaning my shoulder against the wall. Maybe I've been choosing the wrong people to let in. Or maybe I stopped letting people in altogether. Maybe, he said, stepping closer. You just needed someone who actually sees you. My stomach tightened. Not in a dramatic way, not in a romantic way, but in a way that felt like someone had touched a bruise I'd forgotten I had. Carefully. Kindly. I see you, he added. More than you think. The air between us shifted again, but not in a way that crossed any line. It was quiet, respectful, but full of something real. Something neither of us wanted to name too soon. He slipped his arms into his jacket and zipped it halfway, his fingers brushing his collar as he adjusted it. Then he looked at me again, a small smile playing on his lips. You should get some rest, he said. It's been a long day. It has. I agreed. Are you okay? Derided. Yeah, I'm better now. Talking helped? Good, I said. I'm glad you came. He placed his hand on the door handle but didn't turn it. Instead, he angled his head slightly, like he was considering something, weighing whether or not he should say it. What? I asked gently. Can I ask you one more thing before I go? Sure. He stepped a little closer, just enough that I could see the faint lines of tiredness around his eyes. Tonight, he said slowly, when I told you all that stuff, did it make you uncomfortable? No. I answered immediately, surprising even myself with how steady my voice sounded. It made me feel trusted. His shoulders relaxed with a quiet exhale. Good. I didn't want you thinking I cared to dump my problems on you. You didn't, I said. You came here because you needed someone. There's nothing wrong with that. For a moment he just looked at me, as if he was listening to something only he could hear. You know, he said, you have this way of making everything feel calmer. Like the noise in my head gets quiet around you. I smiled softly. Maybe that's why you ended up at my door again. Maybe, he said, returning the smile but with something heavier behind it. Gratitude, maybe, or a kind of lingering ache he couldn't hide. He turned the handle and opened the door halfway. Cool night air drifted inside, brushing against my skin, grounding me. He stepped onto the porch, then paused, turning back one last time. If it's okay, he said quietly, I might come by again. Not to talk about heavy things, just to sit, to exist somewhere that feels steady. You can, I said without hesitation. Anytime. That seemed to settle something deep in him. He nodded, almost to himself, like he'd been waiting for permission he didn't know he needed. I'll text you when I get home, he said. Okay, drive safe. He gave me one last soft look, then walked down the steps toward his car. I watched him go, watched the way he moved slower than usual, as if he was reluctant to break the moment completely. He opened his car door, glanced back once more, then slid inside. The engine hummed to life, the headlights cutting a pale path down the quiet street. I stayed in the doorway long after the taillights disappeared, the cool air settling around me, the house behind me warm but suddenly little too quiet. And somewhere deep inside my chest, something small and steady flickered awake. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Later that night, I sat in the living room with a mug of tea, the one I hadn't finished earlier. The quiet house felt different now, somehow heavier and lighter at the same time. The warmth from the kettle had settled in the corners of the room, and I found myself replaying everything he had said. My phone buzzed softly on the coffee table. I picked it up and saw a message from Leonardo. Just a few words. Thanks for tonight. I needed it more than I realized. I smiled, my fingers lingering on the screen. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at it, feeling a subtle ache of something I couldn't quite name. Pride, relief, connection. Maybe all three. I set the phone down and leaned back on the couch, curling my legs under me. The soft hum of the air vent and the faint ticking of the wall clock became a comforting soundtrack. I realized that tonight hadn't been about fixing anything. It had been about showing up, about listening, about being present for someone who needed it. And yet, part of me couldn't shake the thought that he had changed me too. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the small, quiet ways that matter most. His presence had left a trace, a gentle echo of something tender in the rooms of my house, and perhaps in the corners of my own heart. I thought about the night years ago, the storm, the power outage, the textbooks on my dining table. I remembered how scared he had been, how I had simply offered a cup of tea, a sandwich, a listening ear. And now, years later, here he was, standing at my doorstep as a grown man, carrying burdens I hadn't imagined, letting me hold them for a little while. I sipped the tea slowly, letting its warmth spread through me, and I realized something: moments like this, quiet, ordinary, but full of trust, are rarer than we think. And when they come, you hold on to them, even if only in memory. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, a little longer. I don't say this to anyone, but I felt safe tonight. I forgot what that felt like. Thank you, Selena. I exhaled slowly, a small grateful laugh escaping me. Safe. That one word wrapped around me, filling the empty spaces I hadn't known were so hollow. I typed back quickly but gently. Anytime, Leonardo. Anytime you need. I set the phone aside, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, the house felt alive with something intangible. A kind of warmth that comes from being seen, and seeing someone else in return. And as I sat there, watching the shadows shift in the soft light, I realized that the day had brought more than I expected. It hadn't been about him needing me. It had been about both of us remembering what it feels like to be truly seen, truly heard, and truly steady in someone else's presence. I leaned back, letting my head fall against the couch, and whispered softly to the empty room. Sometimes, it's the smallest gestures, the quietest moments, that change everything. And somewhere deep inside, I knew it wasn't just him who had found a little more peace tonight. I had too.